Just because someone you love had trauma in the form of abuse or neglect when they were a kid doesn't mean that they're entitled to abuse you. This is one of the most common mistakes that people come to me with when I'm coaching them, is believing that, oh, someone has CPTSD and therefore that explains or even excuses why they're physically abusive, emotionally abusive, or just putting the family into a whole bunch of instability and fear. I'm Anna Runkle, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy, and I teach people to notice and heal the symptoms of early childhood trauma. If you went through trauma as a kid, you very likely have had experience choosing partners who had trauma too. And that's common. These are people who we relate to, we feel safe with them. But sometimes choosing partners who are screwed up, maybe not as far down the healing journey as we are, is a form of doing what I call crap fitting. That's when we fit ourselves to crap. We got so good as children at putting up with intolerable situations that it's almost like this superpower, and before we've healed, we can still be under this idea that's not true, that it's somehow strong the way that we're so good at staying calm in the presence of somebody who's being abusive, yelling, screaming, getting drunk, making life crazy. That's not something you want to be good at putting up with at all, actually. You want to fit yourself to situations that are reciprocal and healthy and life-supporting for yourself. So along these lines, I wanted to read a letter from someone named Raymond who wrote to me for Ask the Fairy. He says, "Hi Anna, I'm so sorry to bother you." You're not bothering me. He says, "My wife's CPTSD is spilling over into our new life together, absolutely annihilating my relationships with my family members and also hurting them and their mental health." All right, this sounds serious. Through 1,000 very complicated triggers and scenarios, she's created cycle after cycle and allowed so many different boundaries to be crossed because she's a people pleaser. Her mother abused and neglected her, and she was taught to ignore her instincts and just do what people asked her, or she'll be abandoned. But this set up countless situations where she gave up her power and let people ask things of her that weren't for her to deal with. But she couldn't say no for fear of upsetting anyone or losing me. The issue I'm running into is she sees all of the hurt and triggers from my family as bad intentions, when the reality is that I had a great childhood and grew up in a loving family who has no concept of abuse. I'm coming to you today asking if you could make a video about how the trauma we face as children can be the direct cause for the breakdown of relationships as adults, including and especially with loving people who want to make you a part of a new family. The other aspect is that she sees what others did and is quick to blame, but she has no concept of taking responsibility for her role in how things went. The last thing is that my wife gives up all her power by placing 100% of her emotional state and self-worth on how people treat her, what they say and do, etc., and none of it inherently coming from inside. She's indicated that she'd like to have healthier relationships with my family members, but she believes it's on them to go to therapy to understand how to communicate with and understand the workings of trauma and someone who's been abused. But this puts all of the responsibility on others when the truth is that it's her trauma and her healing to do. It's not my parents' job to learn how to tiptoe around her. It's healing she needs to do so people can be themselves around her and she won't be hurt by triggers. I feel that you know better than most people exactly what I'm talking about and can possibly narrow it down into a topic that I can't. If you could explain this in a video, it would be unbelievably helpful. Thanks, Anna. Oh, thank you, Raymond. This is so good. I feel for you. This is really tough. First of all, I'm so happy for you that your family is basically okay. And how you ended up married to somebody with CPTSD this bad is a bit of a mystery. Something might be going on there, but this happens sometimes, and I sort of have questions about whether your wife was always like this or if she sort of like tumbled down into it, because I'm telling you, getting married and starting a new life with somebody can be a trigger for CPTSD to show up, and I would just say it has something to do with a person can hold themselves together for a long time with this idea like, someday my prince will come, I'll be married, it'll all be safe. And then when we do get married, if that happens, we're still us, and we still have all of our triggers, and there is no prince coming. There's just a human being who you're married to. And so sometimes marriage can bring out the worst in somebody with trauma, at least at first. So I'm really hoping, first of all, that we can help you, and that by helping you, we can help both of you to get through this. So that is a very hard situation. When you're with somebody, if they are not treating your family well, that is a problem so grave that it definitely has the power to ruin a marriage. And for a person who's traumatized, it can bring up this whole loyalty challenge of like, how could you be loyal to the family instead of me? You need to be loyal to me. When really the person in the middle, which is you, is being put into an impossible situation, an impossible dilemma. This is not your trauma. It's not your reaction to it. This is between her and other people technically, except that you're the one who brought her into the family. So there you are. Okay, so I feel for you on that. Being quick to blame. This is another thing with CPTSD, and I'm going to wager that she's had some professional help from people who were not really that capable of working with trauma, who maybe encourage this. And I think when people are in early healing, sometimes they do need to be told they're perfect, they're great, they're okay. But the downside is that people who are traumatized, a lot of the problems today do come from this kind of acting out or being difficult or getting very triggered by things that people have no idea what's going on, and ruining Thanksgiving for the family and coming between their spouse and their family. And this is something that the person who's doing it, the person with CPTSD, they do own this. This is the downside of our own sovereignty over our healing. We own our healing. It's not our fault what happened to us. It's not your wife's fault what happened to her, but it is her responsibility now to figure out how to have relationships with people who are present right now. You are very right to be angry about that, and hopefully you and your family are just not going to get into that or try to make it work for her. The problem that she's having is one that I had in the past once, and I got to tell you, one of the most helpful things that people close to me did is say, you know what, this is your stuff, Anna. You're freaking out about something. I didn't actually do anything. You're putting a demand on me to try to fix it, but I can't fix it. And if you keep asking for it, I'm going to have to just walk out of your life. Boy, that got my attention, and it was the best thing that anybody ever said, because it did help me understand, wow, this is inside me. People are under no obligation really to keep putting up with it. I'm being very difficult, and I better figure this out. And it was terrifying because I had no idea how you were supposed to figure it out. But here you are, you're on the Crappy Childhood Fairy channel. There is a way to start getting improvement with this. It's free, it's easy. I teach it in a free course. These are techniques where you can calm those triggers. Now, very few people are successful at getting other people to use this daily practice. I've given up ever trying to push it on people. I teach it. Some of you come to it. Some of you just watch videos. Other people, including people I'm close to in my life, they're just like, blah, I don't want that. I'm not interested. And I've given up trying to convince them or trying to drag anybody into my way of life. I use these techniques because it helps me. And even though you didn't have trauma, Raymond, I think that it could make sense for you to use these techniques so that you can stay calm when you're in the middle of this conflict that your wife is creating, and so that you can kind of stay centered. And the fact is, you centered, you using techniques that work is more likely to attract her to find a way towards that same state of mind, perhaps using the very same techniques. You can find out about that. When you talk about she gives up all her power. Yes, that's exactly what happens when we make other people responsible for making us feel better. We lose all of our power, and it can really distort a relationship. If you try to endow a partner with all the power to make everything better, it can make them kind of loopy and controlling, and it really upsets an organic balance, just a natural way that people in a couple connect with each other. We go to our corners sometimes to heal our own wounds. We come back together and we communicate about what's going on. Sometimes there's something we need to ask for from each other. But I guarantee you, if your wife is charging at you saying, I'm so upset and effed up, you must fix me right now. You made me feel this way, now fix me. I'm sure you've noticed that no matter how long you talk about it and process it, it never goes away. It never gets better. It's like a vortex of need, right? And you become emotionally exhausted and resentful and shut down. And what happens when people are difficult like that, like if she's putting that demand on you and being upset and putting responsibility on you to fix something that you cannot fix, of course you want to, I'm sure if you could fix it, you would, but you can't. Her trauma is not something you can fix. You can be supportive and understanding, but you can't fix it. What needs to happen is an inside job for her where she learns to recognize that she's going into an emotional flashback or a trigger, and then to follow the steps that work for her to calm the triggers. And there are ways to do that. I teach ways, other people teach ways. It is her option, all right, to go learn these techniques so that she can calm herself. And no matter how bad the trauma was in the past or how intense the trauma storm is in the moment, when we calm ourselves, we can come back and have a conversation about what's bothering us and get much better results. And just have a lucid understanding of like, yes, I'm overreacting. The concept of an emotional flashback, by the way, I'll mention it quickly here. I have whole videos about it. Pete Walker, the brilliant therapist who wrote the book CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, created the concept of an emotional flashback, and many of us relate to it. And it's basically an old emotional memory just comes up out of nowhere. It can be triggered by an event. It can come up while you're sleeping. And this old emotion just takes over. And it's sort of like wearing a yucky pair of glasses and everything looks bad. And for the person having the flashback, it feels like somebody is doing this to you. But nobody's doing it to you. It's coming from an old memory. It's not even happening anymore. And what it's like for the people around us is unreasonable. It feels very unreasonable, demanding, upsetting, and sometimes even abusive. I hear often from the partners of people with CPTSD that their partner is raging at them, making unreasonable demands, sometimes even getting like rough or like breaking things around the house, storming out, giving the silent treatment, sometimes even violence. All of this stuff is on the spectrum of abuse, and nobody should put up with abuse. And it does not serve a person with CPTSD to put up with their abuse. So I guess you call this tough love, but if you're the person who's crap fitting and putting up with this kind of abuse from somebody and justifying it for them by saying they had a rough childhood, I'm going to encourage you not to do that. It doesn't serve them. So finally, I want to talk about this idea that some people have that because they have triggers, that other people need to do something about it. That is the most disempowering approach that a person who had trauma can expect from the people who love them. But a person who has triggers has the responsibility to calm the triggers and make choices about where they want to be. Asking people to tiptoe around triggers is also a recipe to get other people to gradually shut down and create a loss of intimacy. Everybody needs to be able to talk openly. Everybody needs to be able to be themselves. We all need to also be diplomatic and measured about what we say and where we say it. But for two people to be close to each other, ultimately, they each need to be able to express themselves ultimately. So triggers cannot be an excuse to control another person and forbid them to express themselves. It just can't work that way, or communication will stop. You know what happens when you can't express yourself? You give up. You give up on even trying. And when a person has given up on trying to express themselves and mention it when something is bothering them, their heart's just going, and there's no more love there. And that's how relationships end. That's the big thing. That's the big pattern. So if you want a good relationship, have boundaries, be loving, take responsibility for your own triggers, and do not crap fit. So Raymond, I hope that helps you. I realize a lot of people out there are in the same boat, and at some point at before the end of the year, I hope to make a course for couples to help deal with when the one or both person has CPTSD with this. But this is your sneak preview. If you want to hear more about being in a relationship and dealing with somebody who's triggered, I have a video right here with concrete tips that you can use, and I will see you very soon.